Welcome, I'm Darren, and I'll be your guide today as I look at the three leagues that were alongside the NFL in the 80s and the 90s. These are basically they're not exactly takes on the AFL, but like the AFL, they were leagues that popped up at a time where we were really conscientious of the NFL. So they were interesting leagues along the side. I'm talking about the USFL, the WLAF, and the XFL. All three of these are leagues that have their own different qualities. And this is a part 2 video. I've already done a part 1 where I talked very briefly, I gave a basic overview of the nature of the three leagues and how they differ from the AFL so that you have a good feel for what they were and why they existed. I'm going to try not to get into that too much here because I want to talk about the cards, and there's a lot to talk about, as you've already seen clicking on the video from the length of time that it shows up. So I do want to get into it, and I'd like to breeze through it, but I know that I'm going to kind of go on a little bit because the cards really are unusual. And while I don't want to talk about the AFL itself, I'm going to be talking about the USFL, and there's no way to talk about the USFL without talking about the AFL. It's impossible to do. Not because the USFL was designed to be like the AFL, it was actually designed to be kind of the opposite, but turned into that. Again, I talked a little bit about that in the part 1, so here in part 2 I want to talk about the cards, but even with the cards there is a lot between the two. Because when the AFL was created in 1960, it was just another league. There were actually a number of leagues at the time, and so why would this league be any different, except it was really invested in and it had a nationwide footprint, and Fleer realized that this was an opportunity for them to jump into making football cards. Topps had monopoly on the NFL, and while in the first year Fleer was able to kind of pull off something, it was the fact that the AFL was sitting there for the taking allowed Fleer to go ahead and own AFL cards, which meant they were making professional cards. And interestingly, after 4 years of the AFL, the NFL, or Topps, decided to leave the NFL and join the AFL, just doing AFL cards, opening the door for Philadelphia to make NFL cards. Then when the two leagues merged, then Topps had the ability to make a monopoly again. And so in the early 1980s, when a new league popped up, the USFL, whether Topps just wanted to make a quick, cheap money grab, or whether they wanted to make sure that Fleer and Don Russ didn't take advantage of the new league, Topps did decide to make USFL cards alongside the NFL cards. And it was probably the former. It was probably that Topps just wanted to make some quick money because the USFL was in a different era than the AFL was. The USFL needed to market itself. It needed to it needed to become something that fans were just used to, were comfortable with. And one of the big ways was with cards. So they needed a card set that was able to be a marketing tool for the league and help fans to just get used to the players and the teams. So Topps was the right company to do that with because they already had they had the marketing opportunity and they had the name. And so Topps created a card set that was designed to market this league. The cards, you can tell right from the outset, were very much done that way. The cards have kind of a 1983-esque design. You can see that it's inspired by that. And they have the red, white, and blue of the team color, or the league colors. And they really leaned into those three colors. You can see the really fine detailing around the outside is done in a way that makes the cards look very distinct and very, very interesting. But the big thing on these cards is down at the bottom, they have that helmet. And the helmet allows fans to get used to the helmets of the USFL, which is difficult to start to get used to a league where all the gear, all the uniforms look wildly different. So this gave exactly what the USFL needed for fans to start to get used to, okay, this is a new league. And one of the distinct things about this card set, the particular card set in 1984 we're talking about, is the fact that there are a lot of former NFL players whose names you're used to. All throughout the set, they show up all over the place. But everybody focuses on the star rookies that showed up here in this set because the USFL brought in a lot of really top-end rookies away from the NFL. And so some of the names we would get used to down the road, this was where their rookie cards were. And the cards are a lot more rare than the regular NFL releases. So that meant that comparison one to another, these rookies tend to be valued more than the comparative players in the NFL sets. But I talked about the front of the card. It's the back of the card that's really significant with these, because the back of the card looks more like an insert card. It's not done in the same way as the typical NFL cards, because with the NFL cards, they wanted to put statistics, where as many statistics as you could put on there, so you can see the career of the players. Well, for the players who weren't new to having cards, these were guys who had already had an NFL career. There's no point to really get into that, because this is a new league, and so you want to be looking at this league in an isolated fashion. So there wasn't a need for a lot of information on the back, so they didn't design that into it. But more significantly, the card back, it's not the fluffy cardboard that we knew from the main releases of Topps cards. This is done in the same way as the Topps traded cards. And whether this was done up in Canada or in Ireland, I'm not sure. I think these were done in Ireland. But these were done in the same way as the traded cards in every way, including this was a box set, not packs. This was a box set of 132 cards. 132 because for these special sets, Topps like to make one sheet of cards, which is 132 cards. You fill that out, and so every sheet is one set. It's an easy way to operate. So these cards were sold as a USFL set. That's the way it was done, and the cards don't look like the regular NFL cards. They look a little bit more special, a little bit more different. So yeah, this was a really interesting start to these card sets. In 1985, they made their second set, and well, really their other set. And here the design is more based in the spirit of the 85 football set. It is a very simplistic card, again, red, white, and blue. In this case, very much on the red side, extremely on the red side. And they didn't really get into the detailing on the card because they wanted it to be more of a blunt card. I don't know why. They got the floating stuff inside the card. It doesn't read anywhere near as elegantly, but it's a lot more noticeable. And for this card set, here this is very different because it didn't have as many of the longtime NFL players, because now the players were starting to really come into their own. So rookies from the previous year, well, now you're seeing them as veteran players. First year players, but veteran players, or recent veteran players. And then you also have, of course, some star rookies in this set, because again, they were pulling in some amazing talent. But where the 85 set is really, really significant is the fact that now, because you'd had a couple of years of some of these players who really didn't have much of an opportunity in the NFL to get a lot of playing time, you were starting to see a lot of the names that you would see over the years in the NFL. Some of them would be minor stars, and some of them would just be solid players. But the USFL, because it didn't get a third year, it basically became a farm league for the NFL. And so that's what we see with the 85 set, is we're seeing more of the upcoming players in the NFL. But that was unfortunately the end for the USFL, which is too bad. And there was this expectation that that was the last opportunity to actually make a competitive league to the NFL. It doesn't mean that you couldn't actually have a second league. It's just that it's really tough with football to be able to have multiple leagues. In the case of all the major sports, the sports are so big that you can't really get good competition for the sport, but you can at least have minor leagues. So that means that you can have lots of baseball games, lots of basketball games, and lots of hockey games. With football, it's very different because the nature of football is it's super expensive. You have a lot of players. You have a lot of staff. You have to have a big stadium for the games to happen. And there's a lot of attrition that happens in the games because of the physical nature of it, both in terms of wear and tear, as well as potential for injury. It's just really tough for football players to play more than once per week. So you have to build the whole sport around every game is a special event. And for the NFL, that works perfectly. But can you really have much more football than the NFL and for college? And you're going to be depleting talent too. So how do you put together an operation where you can have an additional league that has a lot of top-end talent and people get excited about that league and the NFL and the NCAA, all of that? That's really tough to work. It'd be better if you could do a minor league, but the minor league still has the problem of, can it raise enough funds to be able to operate? And then on top of that, it's a physical sport. There's wear and tear. There's the potential for injuries. There's so much that goes into it, but there's plenty of room for more football if you can get the numbers to work. Whereas with baseball, with basketball, and with hockey, you can just have smaller arenas and have a lot of games to work out the numbers. With football, it was going to be tough. But the NFL did decide to try that. And they needed to find markets that could hold up for teams, not at the NFL level. And Europe was the big burgeoning market in the late 80s. So they built a league that was partially in Europe and partially in the US. This allowed certain markets in the US that would really love to have a football team but couldn't really have an NFL franchise to have a smaller team that could be a counterpoint to a league that also has a non-saturation market in Europe. So in Europe, you have a couple of teams, they're all special in their place, and over the years, it's going to get European fans used to football and more excited, allowing for more big teams or maybe some smaller teams. And in fact, that has worked. Germany and Sweden both have football leagues now, but for big ticket markets, you don't have too many markets that really hold up. So regardless, that's what they wanted to make. They wanted to make a European league with a bunch of American teams to fill out the numbers to allow for a bunch of NFL caliber players as well as a bunch of other players who just love to play football to be able to compete. This was a minor league, and it was called the WLAF, World League of American Football. And since it's an NFL league, basically, who better to kick off the cards than, Pro Set. And so Pro Set's first iteration of making World League cards was inserts in their 1991 Pro Set set. So every pack of 91 Pro Set had one insert card of a World League card. It was a 32 card set, and these cards there were 3 cards per team, 2 players and 1 coach. They also had 2 additional cards which were excited about the league. So you had one looking at the first game, you had one looking at the commissioner, but the key to the set was 3 cards for every single team. And these cards were done exactly the same way as the regular NFL cards. But this card set had an insert set, and that was helmet cards. So every single team also had a helmet card. These were numbered 1 through. So they were recycling numbers. It was an insert set for an insert set, and actually in packs, it was a 16th card in 15 card packs, so it was very much an additional card. But these cards were shots of each helmet sitting on a map, giving a very, very, very rough idea of where the team was playing, specifically which side of the Atlantic. But the cards are gorgeous, and once again, like with the USFL, these cards are designed to get fans excited about a new league that they hadn't experienced, they didn't know. And so it was helping fans to get used to the uniforms. They also had another version of the set though. At the World Bowl, which was the championship game for the WLAF, they handed out this same card set to all of the entries. And so cards 1 through 32 are exactly identical as the cards in the actual packs. So you can't tell the difference. But they also had the helmet cards added on as additional cards, as well as a World Bowl card. And the World Bowl card is the World Bowl trophy, and on the back talks a little bit about the World Bowl game. Not the statistics, because the game hadn't happened yet, but that means that card and then all of the helmet cards are numbered differently. So they're numbered 33 through 43, all 11 of those cards. So their numbers are very different than the other cards you would see in other sets. That's the way you can tell them. But it is pretty uncommon to come upon these sets. So Pro Set also, in Series 2 of their NFL cards, had a 9-card set that was looking at the league leaders, MVP, league leaders of the concluded season. And it was 9 cards because that's the way that Pro Set was building out their sets. So these also showed up. And then Pro Set also did the first actual WLAF standalone card set. And this was done as a standalone card set. It was a complete set of 150 cards that you bought, And it had the same players, the same coaches that you saw, but different shots, and obviously very, very different numbers. It was a card set that started off with, a logo card for Pro Set. It had a World Bowl card that was different because on the back it talked about the actual World Bowl game. This was a set that was built like a Pro Set, so it had its league leaders. It had its cards of the postseason, the World Bowl, etc. It had all of the teams with all the coaches. It was exactly what you would expect. And because it wasn't in packs, because it was a complete set, you didn't have inserts, anything like that, so it's just straight across the table. And then Pro Set would not make another card set, but that doesn't mean that there wouldn't be other card sets for WLAF cards. Wildcard also jumped into the game. So they made a 1992 card set for the WLAF that was looking at the last season, obviously going into the next season. And this was significant for Wildcard because they were trying to figure out their place. What were they going to be? What were they going to do? And the WLAF gave them an opportunity. So they made a card that was kind of a hybrid of the 91 and 92 card designs. And in this case, it is a huge improvement over both of those card sets. The cards themselves have a better aesthetic quality to them. I love the postage stamped logo that they used. And the card back the card back's pretty garish, and those card numbers are just unreadable, really terrible. But otherwise, it's a perfectly fine wildcard set that looks gorgeous. They did not do surprise cards in this card set. In fact, almost all of the cards in the set are player cards, no coaches. They did do a box card as well, but the surprise card they did have was a standalone card. It was isolated entirely on its own, and they did do inserts in these packs. This card set was called Back Attack, and this is not WLAF card players at all. This is NFL players and upcoming college players for the NFL. This is a card you may run into at some point and go, where was this released? Well, this is where it was released. But it is wild card, and so obviously the big question is, did they do the stripes? And of course they did. So they had the typical stripes, 5, 10, 20. These stripes were using the exact same foil colors as the main cards in the NFL releases. 50, 100, 1,000, they did all 6 of them. But what makes these really look cool is they have some squiggly lines up toward the top that are also in that foil, which makes these cards look so exquisite. These are the cards that, had they done these as NFL cards, they would have gotten a lot more appreciation in the NFL market. They didn't. It's unfortunate, but at least we get these really cool cards. But Wildcard didn't go anywhere else with it, and so we got these 2 sets from companies you know, but there was a third company that also made cards for the WLAF, which was Ultimate. And Ultimate was something that it was a card company that was familiar for fans of Canadian sports. I'll say that. They wanted to find their own place as well. So like All World, which jumped into the NFL, Ultimate went for the WLAF. And they really leaned into trying to make their card set the card set for introducing people to football. So the best way to think of their cards was this was the card set that was built for the European audience that was still learning this American football concept. And the card set is fun for that. I mean, first off, the card design isn't all that great. It's Ultimate. This is the way they did cards. And it's, it's okay. It works well enough. The card numbers, though, again, are atrocious. Thank goodness Pro Set could at least do card numbers, because nobody else seemed to. But the card set is really kind of all over the map in terms of all the cool things they did. They did have some league leader cards, and these league leader cards were spread out all throughout the set. They had team cards, and the team cards, there are 2 types of team cards. So this was built team by team by team. So there was a header card for the team, and this was a shot of a shot related to the team. They also had a team checklist at the back that had a whole artistic theme on the front that was designed around, it was a really cool effect for the logo of the team. Of course, all the players inside. You also had TV schedules that showed up here and there, which was really kind of cool. Then toward the end of the set, they had an educational opportunity for people who are not used to collecting cards and not used to the NFL. They did have two NFL players as mascots. They had Jim Kelly and Lawrence Taylor, two New York State football players from the NFL that were used for themes like how to collect. So they had a couple of cards explaining about collecting, and then they also had a whole series with and without these two players explaining about different aspects of how the game worked. So you had cards on offense and you had cards on defense. You had cards on explaining how the passing game worked. And about special teams, you had a card looking at the football field. So it was a whole series at the end of the set that was built to teach people to understand American style football. Not CFL football, American football. And that was the way that they approached the card set. But they wanted this card set to be a lot more interesting than just doing it as a straightforward affair. And they wanted to encourage people to collect the cards and really get into collecting. So one of the things they did, these were all in packs, and they had what looks like the pro set inserts. These are not. This is a contest for a grand prize of winning $1 million. It's just a scratch off, and if you could spell WORLD, you could win $1 million. I wish that L had been the difficult one to find and the WOR and D were all easy to find, because it'd make it a lot easier for those of us who are obsessive compulsive and want to put together a partial set. Regardless, they had this in every pack, but the way they approached the packs was different, because while Wild Card was in packs in a box, it was 36 packs in a standard box designed to be on a display case. These were not. These were designed 12 cards per box, but the box was intended to be purchased really on its own for collectors. This was done in a very different way. First off, the box looks different. It's designed based on the LA Coliseum. It's really cool how it's laid out. But more significantly is when you open it up, you got the 12 packs inside, you do have one insert card sitting inside the box, which is a hologram of one of the team checklist cards that is obviously done as a hologram. So it looks really cool. But then the 12 packs don't fill out this whole box. They have fillers, which is designed for the football field in the stadium. But if you pull those out, this box was perfectly designed to fit cards. It's like the Upper Deck locker boxes, except the Upper Deck locker boxes were designed to hold one Upper Deck basketball set. This wasn't designed for that. This was designed for a lot more. So these boxes were intended to be the boxes that you kept your cards as you became a collector. They built every aspect of the Ultimate Card Set release to introduce new collectors to collecting and new fans to American football. That's how they built it. And we would not get another year. So all three of these card companies only released one card set. So unfortunately, the World League had a tumultuous history. There was an unfortunate history of this league just not quite working and having to be reformulated. So in 1996, Score decided that they were going to be the card company to introduce the new World League. And the league was designed to be just 6 teams in Europe. And it looks a lot like a truncated version of the WLAF, because that's what it was. And Score sold individual sets. These were miniature sets that were designed as preview sets. That's what they were. And in fact, the first card in the card set was a header card that was advertising the fact that they were going to be releasing the full card set coming up. On the card back, they have addresses for each one of the teams, so you can contact them for tickets or whatever. But the card set inside was designed to be 4 player cards for each one of the 6 teams. The first portion of the card set is a lenticular card of one of the 4 players. And it's, that's what it is. A couple of NFL players, like the Fridge, this is one of only 2 of his WLA or World League's cards. They also did individual cards of the other 3 players, so that was the way the set was built out. And that's all there was to it. The cards for these players are not done with statistics, because it's kind of like a new league. It was just kind of introducing people, but these were intended to be a promo set, not a main release set. They did, however, have an insert set. So every single one of these complete sets had one of 6 inserts, which is a team card for each one of the teams. This has each one of the 4 players on it, 2 on one side, 2 on the other side. So you got to collect 6 of these packs in order to complete this set. Now, this is a more reasonable option than what we saw in the Ultimate cards, because in that case, there was 1 out of each of the 10 teams featured in each box, so you got to buy 10 boxes and hope for no doubles in order to complete the hologram set. Here, at least, you got to collect 6 packs and hope that you don't get doubles in order to complete that set, but still, these cards were pretty rare to get. And that was the last that we would see for World League. We wouldn't get any more sets that were created by major league companies. But there is an exception to that, which is that we would later on, around 2000, see another attempt built within card sets in the regular NFL releases. I'm not going to get into that. That's something I want to be looking at in those individual releases. Primarily because I just don't have enough time to get into all that, because I got enough to talk about here with all this. But there were some cases of NFL sets, kind of like with Pro Set, where we would see some more. But other than that, we just really wouldn't have any opportunity to see any more of this. Card collecting is really an American tradition, and for a European league, there wasn't really much of an opportunity to really make it work, at least not at the level that the big card companies were used to and would need. So we just wouldn't see that anymore. But that doesn't mean that there weren't other opportunities for card sets of alternate leagues. The Arena League, I don't want to get into that because that's its own different affair. But the XFL was another attempt to make either a minor league or a counterpoint league. And it was done by the only person who had the tools and the stupidity to actually try to pursue it, Vince McMahon. He had the money, and he had a built-in audience network to allow him to try to make a run at it. So the way he built it was to do it all in one city, etc., 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 and it was a very bold move. He was taking a bunch of players who were fringe opportunity players for the NFL, and it would be quite an interesting experiment. So for this occasion, Topps decided to jump back in. They were going to be the card company for the XFL in 2001, and they did it in packs. So this is a 100 card set, and the cards are a crazy mess of a design because, I mean, everything about the XFL is a crazy mess. The cards are difficult to read. It's weird. And not all of the cards in each team are done the same way, so it doesn't have a complete continuity to it, even at that. They did have a couple of cards in the card set looking at matchups. But the big thing in this card set is, you've got all the players, or not all the players, but you got a bunch of players, but you also have cheerleader cards, 2 cheerleaders for each one of the teams. And these are the famous, were they strippers or not, who knows, but you can tell that the pictures were certainly designed in a professional wrestling concept. So that's kind of the big thing that people remember about the card set. And in the packs, they did have some insert sets. The first insert set was stickers. Now, I will note, there was a whole nother release of just stickers that were done in packs. I'm not going to talk about that. I don't care about those. But in these Topps packs, they did have sticker inserts where they had stickers for the logos of each and every team. On the back, it's just the XFL logo, nothing special. But the end of this little insert set is a sticker of the XFL logo and one of the XFL football. So that was an insert set that was very common to get. They also had an insert set called Loaded Cannons, and this is the main quarterback for each one of the teams. These are a chrome finish, not a Topps chrome finish. This is more like what you saw with Playoff. Well, not quite with Playoff, but it's a chrome finish. Again, not in the finest and Topps chrome manner, and very, very difficult to photograph. I hate trying to photograph these cards, but at any rate, they did have that insert set, which was harder to get. And then they had 2 other insert sets. One of them was autographs. And the end zone autographs are gorgeous cards. This is the one part of the whole XFL affair where I look and I go, that's cool. I like those. They really are among the better looking autograph cards made, period. So that's good. Unfortunately, the Gridiron Gear fabric cards are, not so much. These are just kind of garish, and we're back to feeling like the XFL. So that was what they did for the XFL Take 1. I mean, they didn't even finish the first season, so it's not like there would be any reason for any more cards. But there is one other thing you may run into that's kind of cards, and so I'm definitely going to talk about it here, which is the Art Box Tabletop Football cards. So tabletop football is the little wedges of paper where it's shaped in a triangle. You kick the thing. And around this time, we started to see enough of a popularity of it that there were professional ones that were made. In fact, in the NFL, we did actually have some of these flickball quite a few years earlier. But at any rate, Artbox decided to do this for the XFL. The way that the cards are is they're all about the little wedge that's fit into an otherwise normal size card. These aren't quite thick though. And they're highly lacquered surface, very glossy, and every one of these it's all about the flick ball. So on the back, there's almost no information on the card back except for a number. But the way that it's built is it has each of the 8 teams in order. So the first team all the way through the 8th, and then they have a 9th, which is an XFL theme that goes along with the theme of these footballs. And the little footballs, as well as the card around the outside, they have a particular theme that fits with all these, that then, starting at 10, you repeat. Again, the cards, each of the teams is all in order, and then at the end, you have the XFL equivalent of that. And then starting at 19, going through 27, you have the same thing. You have all of the teams in order and the XFL. And then again, starting at 28 and going through 36, again, all the teams and the XFL at the end. So they have 4 different series of not flick balls, but the tabletop footballs built in different themes throughout this whole card set. So the card number 1, that team is also at 10 and 19 and 28. That's what they show up as. And then starting at 37, you start off with team 1 through, but these are cheerleaders, and these are the same. This is one of the cheerleaders, not 2, but one of the cheerleaders that we already saw in the top set, and it's the same picture that was used in tops. It's just truncated down onto this little football. And that is the way that they closed out the set, except you might notice, well, but what about 45, which is the XFL? Well, in that case, they used Rashaan Salam, who is from one of the teams. And so Rashaan Salam is the only football player who shows up on these tabletop football art box cards. But they did do inserts as well, and the inserts are pretty tough to come by. As I was putting together this video, I decided to open enough packs in order to complete all of the insert sets, and it took me hundreds of packs to do it. Not that there are a lot of these cards in each of the packs, but still, I have like 30 of the actual regular sets in order to complete each one of these insert sets. The first insert set is the chrome finish, and these look more like the Topps chrome cards. Each one of the cheerleader cards is done in this way. So this is kind of a parallel of the cards in the set. It's just that the numbers are different. They're 1 through 8. They also had another series which was refractors, and this is the next group forward. So the cards 28 through 35, these are the exact same ones. Again, cards numbered 1 through 8 on the actual card backs, but they are refractor parallels of cards 28 through 35 in the set. And they did do one standalone, which is the Rashaan Salam card, which they did also as a refractor. This one is a refractor that's done a little bit more elaborately than what we'd seen with the team logos, but those are the 3 inserts, or the 2 insert sets and the standalone insert. And that was what they did for Artbox. Now, with the Artbox cards, these are a very interesting affair that's very much different from everything else you would see, but because the whole function is supposed to be different. But I did want to make sure that you knew about it, because they are cards. They're actually built with the correct size, and they have inserts, which is pretty cool. But that's basically all there is to talk about for USFL, the WLAF, setting aside some of the later World League stuff in regular sets, and the XFL. If you do have any questions, because there's a lot with this, I'm absolutely up for answering any questions. This is a very interesting topic, so I wouldn't be surprised if there was a bit of a conversation that would start. It would make perfect sense. Again, this is part 2, so if you haven't seen part 1, I'd urge you to at least watch it so you can get a feel for how these 3 different leagues kind of worked. I think everything else is pretty much clear. So I do want to thank you guys for watching. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do so. Do check out my other videos, and thank you very much for watching.